Jerome, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Tell me about your business. Tell me where you guys are located, your website address, Instagram, all your social stuff.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I'm located in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Jerome Pollos Photography. I've been in business. I started the business about 2011, away from the, hey, will you shoot my friend's wedding kind of stuff, and went totally legit 2011. And I left the newspaper world in 2013. So I worked at a daily from 2000 to 2013.
Wow.
And then when the wedding and portrait side got too busy, it was either stay at the place where I worked a ton of hours for not a lot of pay, or go the direction where I make decent money and have fun and get to do a little bit more creative stuff.
What's your website?
Jerome Pollos Photography.
Okay.
Pollos. And then
same on Instagram and.
Yeah, well, Instagram, it's kind of stupid. I had my original Instagram handle from like way back when Instagram first started, which was the Roamer, because that was my nickname in the newsroom.
Nice.
And then I have at Jerome Pollos Weddings is my wedding Instagram handle. But then I got like 2 other ones too, but we'll just focus on the weddings.
All right, cool. Do you have multiple brands that you do?
So I have portraits and weddings as one brand, and then I have my editorial and commercial as a separate brand.
Okay.
Just because I found out when I first got started, I had one website that had everything on there. I found out that brides and grooms don't looking at pictures of house fires and riots, and photo editors in New York don't want to see pretty pictures of brides on a beach.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how long were you working in photo prior to you starting your business?
I stumbled in photography in 1995.
Wow.
I right out of high school, kind of joined the military. I was a troublesome kid, so I wanted to get out of trouble. Left. I was going to be a radio DJ in the Navy, and so they sent me to journalism school, and they had a 2-week section of photojournalism at that school, and I failed it. I hated it. It wasn't the greatest thing, and I thought I was going to be a DJ, and I was going to either Sudabay Creek, Puerto Rico, or Cuba, all radio stations, beaches, nice spots to be. And they sent me to DC to a newspaper, where as soon as I got there, they gave me a camera and said, I am now a photojournalist.
Wow.
One thing led to another. Found out that I loved photojournalism. Had a boss that noticed it and kind of just threw me in. So anytime we had a Washington Post, New York Times, National Geographic photographer come to the base, I was assigned to them. They were like, hey, you escort them, you ask them questions, see how they work. And I got some great job shadowing opportunities.
Nice.
Got some great mentors. And then that led me to 2000 when I got out of the Navy, and I took a job at the Coeur d'Alene Press. And I was there for 13 years.
Wow.
And then I've been doing this ever since.
So you said you were shooting like for your buddies, right? Their weddings and stuff.
Yeah, 2006 time frame. I started having people say, hey, will you take pictures of my kid? Will you take pictures of this? And I didn't know what I was doing. I'm a photojournalist, so we don't do a lot of posing. We don't do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And, but I took it on, and to be honest, I was miserable. I was like, it's nice to have a little side hustle here, but I'm not enjoying it. And then I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a pretty accomplished photojournalist and a wedding photographer in his own right. And he was in Florida at the time. And I was like, man, I just can't do this, like I can't be a wedding photographer. It sucks, you're posing everybody, everything's so contrived, and everything, you're making people look stoic, and they're not stoic. And he said, stop being a wedding photographer, just be a photojournalist who's documenting a wedding. I was like, holy shit, you can do that? And so he said, yeah. So I had 3 clients that were booked for that summer, and I went up to him and said, hey, I got an idea. And one of them said, hell no. And 2 of them said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And all 3 of them were happy with their photos, but I realized the one that I did the traditional wedding photography for, I was not miserable, but it just wasn't fun. There wasn't anything that like got me excited, like documenting a real moment. I didn't like posing stuff.
Yeah.
So ever since then, I kind of shifted to just straight photojournalistic approach because that's where I came from. That's my background, and I haven't looked back. It's been a blast.
So for those that don't know the difference, tell us what the difference is between the two.
So your traditional photography, like real traditional wedding photography back in the day, is a photographer would show up at a wedding, You know, take some pictures of the ceremony, line everybody up at the altar, take family photos, get a big group shot of the wedding party, maybe get a post shot of you cutting the cake, and then was out of there in like 2 hours or less. Where I kind of come in at the photojournalistic approach is all about storytelling. So I try to get it where I'm capturing the beginning portions of the preparation all the way through the ceremony and the reception with some portraits thrown in there. Because you have to do portraits now and then. Every once in a while I get clients that don't want to do any, and I love that. But people still want that. So you have to have that thrown in there too. But it's all basically looking for candids more than anything, you know, true authentic moments and nothing, not a lot of posed images.
Right. Right. So that's the photojournalistic part of it, right? It's like you're just looking for the candid moments, just trying to tell the story of the day without, you know, these fixed moments of time where everybody's posing.
Yeah, no shot list. I like it when people come in with their Pinterest 101 things to ask your wedding photographer, and it's all like, you know, like, do you do this? Here's a shot list I want. You know, I want a picture of my mom looking at me through a mirror I'm holding as she puts pearls around my neck. I'm like, is that really going to happen? Like, am I going to be wasting time trying to get this post photo as your grandmother's, you know, crying with your sister in the corner because they're enjoying a moment? Like, I just makes me cringe.
Yeah. Well, it's not realistic, right? In most cases.
Right. Yeah. And what I find is when people do contact me, it's always because they just love the moments. Like, you look at my website, there's not a lot of real pretty pictures on there. You know, all of them are like either fun or sincere or moving or something. There's some sort of emotional reaction you get from it. And a lot of times it's laughter, because I'm always looking for those photos that just make people, you know, like look and say, oh my God, what's happening here? Because, you know, that's what I enjoy shooting. I love getting those moments because those are the ones that people like to share and talk about and show character in them. And it's not just, you know, the face chop of the groom with the bride looking off to his shoulder and into the sunset kind of photos.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like the process of when people contact you. What usually is the process for you and them, for you to do work with them?
I'm a pain in the ass. I'm very thorough on stuff. I interview potential clients more than they interview me, I think. I usually give them a rundown of how I do things, and just kind of, you know, I always have my starting prices on my website, so I kind of pre-qualify people so they know what they're getting.
That's smart.
And then, but you know, I do things a little bit differently where I don't include all the images. I do an artwork credit. So if they want to buy all the images, they can. But I've noticed after surveying clients over the past few years that my average client only shares about 27 images from their wedding on social media. They print an average of 6. The average wall display they'll print is 11 by 14s. And if they don't get an album from me, 70% of them never do. So they can use that artwork credit to either buy all the images, or they can use it to purchase an album, or just purchase some of the images and get a wall display or whatever they want. So I have to explain that because everybody else is just, you know, the shoot and burn. Like, oh yeah, I'll show up at your wedding and 4 weeks later you'll get a bunch of images.
So what's the difference there? Yeah, what's the difference there with like an art credit versus the shoot and burn? Just so people know.
So for me, when I shoot portraits, I don't just give them a flash drive. I always have people come in and we select the images that they absolutely love. And then we try to figure out, based on our consultation, how we're going to use these images. Are they going to be on a wall? Are they going to be in a book? Are we looking for just smaller prints? Because most people don't do anything with all those images. I think society has been, you know, beaten into their head that they have to have all these images, but they don't do anything with them. So for portraits, I started doing this, you know, like 5-6 years ago. So I started doing the same thing with weddings where, you know, instead of just saying, here's a download link, download all these photos, upload your 20 to Facebook, and in 1 year, you'll see them again when your anniversary notification pops up. And I hated that. You know, I love my stuff being printed. I like it when people actually use the images and not just pay me thousands of dollars to have a flash drive that goes in a junk drawer. So that artwork credit basically gives them the opportunity to decide how they want to use their images. It's included with every package. It's just $1,000. It's almost like $1,000 gift card to Jerome Pollos Photography. So if they know they want an album, they can get an album. If they know they want 50 images or 100 images, they can, you know, break it up however they want.
Yeah.
And after I explained it to people, I just did a little phone consult today, and explained it. And they're like, holy crap, we never heard of that before. And I was like, well, this is why, and they're like, we're going to come in and do a consult then. And so we're going to do a face-to-face and sit down and
Yeah.
go over my little handy PDF on the big screen and
Yeah.
talk about what they really want from their wedding and what their expectations are. That's another big thing I go over with them. And then just make sure we're a good fit, make sure we all have the warm and fuzzy, and we can stand each other, because there's nothing worse than when
Right.
people book somebody that they're going to be with for longer than they are their future spouse, and they can't stand them.
Yeah. 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 That's great. Do you like, when you find that someone's not a good fit, like they want the general poses and things like that, and do you even get any of those anymore? Because I feel like you've told such a good story on your website and qualified people a little bit. You probably get pretty much people that are looking for your style. Is that kind of where
For
you're
the
at now?
most part, it is. You'll still get a few every year. I think last year I ended up getting 112 inquiries.
Hmm.
And a lot of those, I'm already booked, or maybe they find out that I'm not in their budget. But there's typically about 5 or so a year that we'll sit down and talk, or we'll be on the phone, and we just find out either fundamentally my approach is wrong for them, or my style is wrong. They may like the photos.
Yeah.
And what I find is a lot of times you'll get brides who really love the idea of candids, but when they see a candid of themselves, they're like, oh, I have this chin thing, or, I don't like the way my hair looks when I laugh, or whatever. You know, that's a conversation I have a lot. It's like, all right, you love candids, but do you love candids of yourself? Because there's two totally different things.
It is. It's so true. I mean, that you just said that is so true, because yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah. So those people, I'll tell them, like the first time I did it, I was nervous as shit, because I was like, I'm basically going to tell these people I don't want to work with them.
Yeah.
But after a while, you kind of understand that if I'm going to be doing something that I'm not enjoying, they're not going to get product that they're going to enjoy, or maybe the experience they're not going to enjoy as much, because they can tell your heart's not in it.
Yeah.
So I much rather not risk a bad review and send them to somebody that I think is going to be a perfect fit for them. And I have a network of photographers. We all have a Facebook chat. And if I see that, all right, they want somebody that takes these very, cinematic type photos, or something that's very light and airy or dark and moody, I have photographers that are perfect for that. And I just say, hey, are you available on this date? And if they do, they're available. I contact a couple and say, hey, this guy's available. So you don't have to cold call 50 photographers to find the one that's still open.
Yeah, that's good that you do that, because that is what happens, right? Like they got to go off and call a bunch of people and figure out who to talk to and when and where. And
yeah, it becomes frustrating.
Yeah.
I've talked to so many people that are like, yeah, especially the people who wait, like 3 months before their wedding date, like,
Yep.
oh yeah, I want to get married, on, whatever the popular date is. Like, I'm sure 10/10/2020, I'm going to have, like, 3 months before, I'm going to have 15 people contact me.
Yep.
And they're going to find the same thing, that they waited too long, and they're going to hit this storm where they're just constantly calling people. Are you available? Are you available? Are you available?
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately. What do you see as what do you say, like maybe a trend or something like that couples are asking for today, that you constantly are seeing more and more?
I don't think it's what they're asking for. It's what I'm seeing that they're doing. And one of them is, I'm seeing a lot of weddings where they have no wedding party. They're just saying, you know what? We're keeping it simple. It's just going to be us up there. They might have like their brothers or sisters or really close friends kind of be like their right-hand man or girl during the day. And they'll still do photos with them as a wedding party, but they don't want to have people up there. And I don't know if it's because they don't want to make the decision because they have like 30 people they could invite. They don't want to hurt feelings, or if they just want to keep it simple. But I'm seeing that. I'm also seeing a trend go towards smaller weddings, not just COVID based, but even before that. Last year, I was seeing a lot more weddings where there was like, 30 to 50 people. And in some of these weddings, I shot a wedding 2 years ago. It was, I want to say 24 people, if you included me, the wedding planner, the guitar player, and the violinist. But I mean, their budget was huge. I mean, they had a cruise boat go out for an hour and a half as they flipped the venue from ceremony to reception. They had fireworks. I mean, they had a 6-course plated, meal. So I think people are starting to realize, you know, we have these funds, and we don't want to invite all these people that we might not, you know, hang out with a lot. We're just inviting. Let's make it small and just have a big blast.
Well, too, the more people you invite, I mean, the more it costs,
Right.
right? I mean, so if you say, like if you do 25 to 30 people, you can actually afford to do a lot more things that are important to you and have a better experience versus, trying to fit in 300 people in this huge deal.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. $50,000 budget with 300 guests and a $50,000 budget with 20 guests is entirely different things.
Entirely different thing, right? Like for 300 guests, you're going to spend 25 or $30,000 just on food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Booze, and that's it, right? Like you just wasted that money.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you got to like go to the dollar store for your decorations.
Exactly, right? So why not just yeah, I've been seeing this too, like the number of guests just keep going down further and further. So I've been seeing that as well. Yeah. What questions would you say couples should be asking themselves or asking if they're looking for a photographer, what questions should they be thinking about?
The biggest one I see is they don't understand the difference between approach and style. So especially in photography and videography, people will contact me and they'll say, ooh, I really like your photos. And they like what they look like, but they don't understand the approach behind it. That goes back to that, like candidates of other people and candidates of yourself.
Right.
And for approach, you have the traditional, you have the which are a little bit more posed. You have the documentary photojournalistic, which is a lot more kind of go with the flow. You have these hybrids where I have a buddy of mine who spends like an hour to 2 hours shooting details, and he's freaking magnificent at it. But they'll spend that much time because sometimes these clients are spending, $15,000 on invitations.
Yeah.
They got these, they're hiring calligraphers and gold leafing and all this other stuff. So understanding the approach is like the first step that people should be looking for. And then understanding the style, like my photography, there is no trend to it. I tone everything just like I did at the newspaper. Minus I take care of blemishes now, which if I did it before, I'd get fired.
Yeah.
But, my colors, nobody's going to look at my photos and look at the toning and saying, oh, that looks like that Pinteresty 2008 kind of stuff. That's so 2008. I want it to be timeless. I want it to look as good now as it will in 20 years.
Yeah.
So some people like that. Other people want that light and airy. Some people want the dark and moody. So I think understanding that before you even contact your photographers, so you can see, if what they kind of go with. You can find out their approach by reading their about me's or looking at their wedding pages to kind of how they go about stuff. And you can understand their style just by looking at the images. Once you get those paired together, the big questions you should be asking is how do they go about their day? Like, some people are very formulaic, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. Other people are just totally go with the flow. Some people are super OCD, some people aren't. Understanding how that jives with the way you want your day to go and how you want to communicate with that photographer. Like, are you just going to give them a deposit and you won't hear from them until a few days before the wedding? Or are you going to be in constant communication with them the whole time? Yeah. Understanding that level of how you'll work with that photographer or not want to work with that photographer should kind of lean you to how you're going to question those methods.
Yeah, which goes back to what you were saying earlier about being a good fit, right? Because sometimes people are just like, I just want to hire you. I'll talk to you a couple of days before, right? And then some people are just like, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do I mean, it's just the way people are in general. So I think it really goes back to what you said earlier. Are you a good fit with that couple? And because then you'll know, like, how do they want to be communicated with, right? Like, do they want me to talk to them more often, or do they not care? And we'll talk, a week before.
Well, and that all goes back to relationships too. Like, ultimately, how's that look? Like today's case in point, I got interviewed by a newspaper about how COVID is affecting the wedding industry. And they wanted to talk to a couple, and I just happened to have a couple that has a October date, and they were worried about it. but I know them enough to know that their business also struggled. So I figured, hey, they could probably use a little plug for their business and also give their side of their story. So I
Yeah.
just did a quick text message as I was, working with the reporter and connected them, and it's like having that ability works out well. And we'll send text messages back and forth to each other just on goofy stuff, talking about pizza and dogs and whatever. But
Yeah.
that's how I communicate with my clients. Some people don't like that, and that's fine. I mean, very rarely do I get people that, say, Jerome, shut the hell up. You're sending me too many text messages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're a good fit on that level. They understand that, I want to be as approachable and I want them to be comfortable with me. So when I show up, it's not, oh, our wedding photographer is here. I want them to say, oh, Jerome is here.
Yeah.
Because that makes my job so much easier when they present me like that to friends and family versus I'm the help that's coming in to photograph their wedding.
Yeah. Makes a big difference for sure.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears, talk about business side a little bit of here. And what would you say over the past couple of years has worked well for you?
Communication, like understanding what I'm looking for in clients and letting them know kind of what I can offer them and just being upfront and honest and knowing when we're not a good fit and letting them know that. That's been like the best thing. I send out so many damn questionnaires. I send out a consultation questionnaire. I send out a pre-wedding questionnaire. I send out an album design preferences questionnaire. I send out a questionnaire when we're going to schedule the reveal session so we can figure out what they want to eat and have to drink.
Nice.
I communicate so much, and that's one thing that I get in my reviews all the time is I was easy to contact and I always had answers and was able to provide insight. So communication was great. And over the last year, 2 years actually, I've learned to simplify. I feel so sorry for my couples 5-6 years ago. I was so damn confusing. I had collections upon collections and different levels of access to stuff. And I just realized it made people just almost have an aneurysm by looking at what they could get. So I found, ways to just simplify it. I don't do collections, I custom build everything based on what they need. And now, instead of having 15 different sizes of wall displays, I have small, medium, large, and extra large. And if they want anything beyond that, they can get a custom quote.
Sure.
But it's just simplify stuff. Don't make it confusing for people. If you went to McDonald's and they had 8 different types of McNuggets that you could get, people would probably stop ordering McNuggets.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Making it simple probably helps a lot for sure. Outside of COVID, what would you say has been your biggest challenges over the past couple of years?
I would say the biggest challenge is just kind of staying ahead of the curve on what's that, or maybe even trying to create the curve. So with my artwork credit that I do, that is one thing that nobody else is doing right now. And I wanted to do it because of what I saw in the trends of what my clientele is doing. Just kind of like how you follow trends.
Yep.
And you look at those metrics and see, kind of predict where stuff is going. That's one thing that's really hard, staying ahead of that curve. The other thing is not doubting myself a lot. Like I have a formula that is working, but every business owner I think goes through that stage where, between February and March, you're like, all right, the phone's not ringing as much as it was in December or in May. And you start thinking, well, maybe I need to do this different, this different, this different. And I just need to tell myself, switch what you need to, but when stuff goes slow, just realize it's cyclical and find other ways to kind of take up that time so you're not just sitting there. My wife has to talk me off the ledge of, business failure. It's all going downhill. My phone hasn't rang in 3 days.
Right. I know. It's the end of the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Patience, right? Patience.
It's a virtue.
Yeah. If you had to go back and tell yourself something to maybe 3 or 5 years ago, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Oh, geez. I would probably tell myself to realize that I have it easy. Like I think as a business owner, especially in the wedding industry, we work our tails off, especially in this area from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Typically we are every weekend we're working, we're toning throughout the week, we're emailing, we're designing albums. you know, and you're trying to fit all that in an 8-hour day. So you're not just, you know, having the business work you, but, you know, you're kind of managing it properly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, there's the off season where you got some portraits, commercial work coming in, but then you're like, oh, maybe I'll go snowboarding today. Maybe I'll do this, you know, and every once in a while I got to remind myself that one, you know, I mean, you can give yourself time off, but just realize that you're not working that hard at all throughout the year. And so you got to remind yourself sometimes to kick yourself in the butt and say, all right, you know, stop feeling sorry for yourself, put in the work, look at what you can do a little bit more every day. And then when you do have your time to enjoy, just enjoy it, but realize those days, you know, that are slow, you can't just let them string out to be slower and slower days until you get busy again. You always have to hustle and grind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. You do. I always have to hustle and grind every day, man. It seems like it. Yeah. Last question. What is your most inspirational or best wedding story that you have?
Oh, geez. Inspiration or best. I've had a lot of fun weddings. I've also had a lot of, you know, weddings that were great. Just one in particular, I wasn't shooting this wedding on my own. It was my friend's wedding. I was second shooting. But I was still working at the newspaper, and the bride had some medical issues that were pretty serious. And the father of the bride, had an inoperable brain tumor. And they gave him 3 to 6 months to live about a month before the wedding.
Whoa.
And during that first dance that they were having, I'm shooting, you know, from one side, and you can just see all these people in the background, you know, just tears up in their eyes. And you know, the dad's crying, the bride's crying, and I look over at my buddy, and he's looking at me, and we're both kind of tearing up. You know, and it's times like that you realize that, you know, you can't be formulaic in your approach. You can't just shoot it like, oh, it's just another wedding, because it isn't. I mean, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what moments are going to happen, and how pivotal those are in these people's lives. So, you know, just kind of going with the flow and just shooting stuff as it happens, you know, it's great, but you got to understand like the importance behind that stuff. And that goes back to the communication part. You know, those questionnaires, I always ask, who's important in your life that's going to be at this wedding? Give me some background on why this person's important. So when I'm at the reception and I'm looking across the dance floor and I'm seeing you two having a moment, I can understand why that's important and how I need to shoot that, not just get a snapshot and walk away.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Especially with trying to get photojournalistic stuff right. It's important to understand the relationships, probably more, right? So that you can capture those moments like you were mentioning.
Well, definitely. In that album, you know, it's, you know, an heirloom piece. I mean, I don't mean to sound salesy, but, you know, that album's going to be around a lot longer than that couple will be. And one thing, I think the reason why I'm so connected with photography, and I didn't even know it at the time, was my grandmother had a hallway with photos up and down the hallway. And some of these photos are from like the 1880s and 1920s and, you know, time in Panama. And I just remember looking at these photos and wondering who these people were, and, you know, hearing some of the stories about them. And that's awesome, because that photographer that shot those back then, you know, he might not even known the significance of that and how it would impact me or whoever else saw those photos.
It's true.
So I think the historical context, you know, of weddings, and I hate to say it, but when I first started, you know, even thinking about doing weddings, it was such a stigma as a photojournalist. It was like, oh, you're going to be one of those chintzy wedding photographers. But, you know, there is a little bit of significance to it, you know, and the historical, you know, representation of these people and telling their stories is just powerful as, you know, working for a daily newspaper, except, you know, everybody's just in a lot better clothing and you get better food.
Yeah. Well, and it's a little more like, you know, it's a little more, I want to say micro market or micro small versus, you know, like, you know, when you're talking about news, it's more general, right? Like it's a larger thing. We're talking about a very small piece of society here where you're getting a story and it's their life and the, you know, the starting of a new family and then the carrying on of the generations of other people, and, you know.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's why I keep doing it. I mean, it's if it ever got to a point where I felt that everything is becoming cookie cutter and I'm not looking for those moments and looking for that story, I would get out of it. But I love a good story. I love moments. I like cake and I like dancing. So I'm in a good spot.
Yeah. Jerome, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right, bye.